So it was a wise decision using the term emergent literacy because more reviews that analyzed the age group that I was interested in came up. Whereas with the term literacy growth, my search results were really broad. The last term that I decided to include when looking for these reviews was Head Start. The reason why I decided to use Head Start was because a lot of the participants that are enrolled in this program are Hispanic children, which is the population that I'm interested in. And then another reason why I chose Head Start is because the participants attending this preschool program have to be at least 3 years old and can't be older than 5 years old, which is the age group that I was focusing my research on. Using all these different combination of terms helped me get pretty accurate reviews for the most part, although there were some limitations. Some of the reviews that I pulled up only they did analyze the Hispanic population, the Hispanic child population, but sometimes the sample size was small for that ethnic group. So more participants tended to be Caucasian or African American children in these studies, which is why I selected these terms to increase my chances of getting reviews that analyzed more participants that were Hispanic preschoolers. Findings. So one of my main concerns was trying to figure out if it was a single factor that contributed to the literacy development of Hispanic children, or if there were multiple factors involved. And the reason why I wanted to address this question is because my hypothesis states that only one factor contributes to the low literacy development of Hispanic children. Based on my results, 22 of the reviews that I assessed supported the single factor explanation. Only 7 of the reviews that I looked at indicated that multiple factors contribute to the low literacy development of Hispanic children. So a majority of the academic community believes that it's only one factor shaping the literacy growth of my sample study. And by majority, I mean that out of the 30 articles, more than 15 of them supported the single factor explanation. Which are the most frequently cited factors? The most frequently cited factors came out to be classroom and home practices. There was a disagreement about which classroom practices are the most effective. So even though 6 reviews said that it's classroom practices, that's the factor responsible for the literacy development of Hispanic children, they couldn't agree on which of the practices should be used in the classroom. One of the reviews said that the most effective classroom practice is where the teacher initiates conversations that allow children to analyze the book content. So in that review, the focus was not on the amount of time that the teacher read to the child. It was more on related to like what kind of discussion the teacher initiated. In a different review, it was the classroom practice that was supported was the duration of time. They believed that influenced the literacy development of Hispanic children. But for home practices, all of the reviews said that the most important home practice is having parents read to their children as frequently as possible. And one of the reviews also noted that that's why Hispanics are scoring lower than Caucasian students, because book reading is not that frequent in Hispanic households. Discussion. So my hypothesis was that Hispanic children are scoring low in literacy because their first language is Spanish. So they enter the classroom and they're behind their peers because they didn't learn English as their first language, whereas other ethnic groups like Caucasians and African Americans do know English. So my hypothesis was disproved because classroom practices and home practices appear to influence the literacy growth of Hispanic children. So it was not language. Language did not have anything to do with the language, with the literacy development of my sample study. And even in the other reviews where they cited that language skills are responsible for the literacy development of Hispanic children, when they talked about language skills, they weren't referring to they weren't referring to like Hispanic children are behind because they only know Spanish. Like, they didn't mention that at all. They didn't think that like only knowing one language affected literacy development. They just stated that not enough conversations are held at the household of these children. Questions from the audience?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Emily.
So let me think how to phrase this. Is there another factor other than language that you think, that something that you might not have examined in your study that could have affected the rates for Hispanic children?
Yes, I think there could be other factors that I overlooked and also that the reviews might have not addressed. I guess one of the factors that I'm thinking about would be the education of like the parents. I didn't see that mentioned at all in the reviews that I analyzed, and that could be a factor that contributes like to the low literacy development of children, because maybe the parents aren't since they don't have like a high education, that could be affecting the literacy development of their kids. I would think that the more educated the parents are, the more they would promote certain literacy activities like reading. So maybe that could be a factor that I overlooked or that other reviews didn't address.
I have another question.
Go ahead.
So why is this important? So why should we care about the literacy rates of one specific racial group, and how does that relate to the broader problem of America's children not being able to read and being literate and not being able to graduate high school in the long run?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the reasons why I chose to like study this population, is because like I did some research on like high school dropouts and how many Hispanics go like attend four-year universities, and I noticed that when I looked at that at those two factors, I noticed that like Caucasian and African American like students more of them tend to attend like four-year universities, and also there's more Hispanic high school dropouts than those two other ethnicities. So that's why I chose like this topic, and that's why I thought it was significant to address it, because we have like the Hispanic population is like one of the largest growing minorities in the US right now. And even for Head Start, like even in programs for Head Start, like a lot of the participants are Latino children. So if they don't acquire the skills that they need to move on from preschool to kindergarten and then to wherever they end up in their educational careers, they're not going to be successful. And if you don't have like literacy skills, that's going to contribute to like unemployment and like high crime rates. If you can't get a job, like if you can't read, you're not going to find a job. So that's going to contribute to those things that I mentioned. Any other questions?
Thank you.
No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, audience.